This is A Line Around Your Thoughts, a podcast that centers on conversations with artists, writers, musicians, and creatives from around the Inland Northwest. I'm your host, EJ Iannelli. Joining me today in the Roquehart Media Studio is Suzanne Ostersmith, the founding chair of the Gonzaga Dance Program, now retired, and also the current co-chair of the Spokane Arts Commission.
Indeed.
So welcome, Suzanne.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
So back in May,
you
retired after 25 years in the Gonzaga Dance Program.
I did indeed.
And I really wanted to bring you in at that point so that we could sit there and reminisce about 25 years and beyond. But it seemed like everybody was kind of vying for your attention at that point.
Yeah.
And so you had some write-ups, I think, in every media outlet across Spokane.
It's very kind.
So I'm glad that we kind of had the delay and now we can catch up and do some of that reminiscing, but also look ahead to some of the cool stuff that's coming up on the horizon.
Great.
So dance program.
Yeah.
I'd really like to kind of take stock of some of the accomplishments that that you had while at Gonzaga, because you went from adjunct professor, if I'm not mistaken, all the way up to dance chair, and you were kind of instrumental in every stage of evolution of the Gonzaga Dance Program. So in a nutshell, let's recap
25 years.
Let's look at 25 years.
Yeah. There are actually videos online that people can look at the history of those 25 years and kind of the key things. But yeah, it was an absolute pleasure. It was work. It was hard work. It was an obsession, quite frankly. I cannot believe that I got to do the things that I did with the people that I did them with, right? Amazing colleagues and community members along the way. So yeah, 25 years, a lot happened in that time from, like you said, adjunct, and we had one or two dance classes a semester, a year, to then adding a production and then adding a dance minor and an interdisciplinary arts minor, eventually a major, adding faculty along the way, additional concerts, and all the way to presenting series with the Myrtle Woldson, hosting American College Dance Association Conference in 2020. It was an absolute joy. And I feel so privileged to have been a part of that, to have been, kind of a little bit of a rallier to make it all happen, along with all the community members and other teachers and students that were along for the ride. And together we made it happen to that point. And now it's flying, right? That was my ultimate goal, was that at one point a number of years ago, I looked at how much I did to keep it afloat, and it was not healthy, because if something had happened to me, I was doing more than the job description required, as so many people do in their jobs. But for the program to have the ability to be sustainable, it was not in a sustainable model. And so really the last 6 years or so, I worked very hard to try to put the pieces in place so that it would be a sustainable model after I left.
And what are some of those specifics that you put in place, or those pillars, in order to make it a sustainable model?
Yeah. And some of those things I put in place, but I shouldn't say that clearly that it was just me. It was also some serendipity, right? The fact that the Myrtle Woldson Performing Arts Center came into place. I had no part in that, but that was very significant. We were able to hire 2 regular full-time faculty. The new chair is Cynthia Gutierrez. She's amazing. Can't wait for you to meet her if you haven't. So she's taking Gonzaga Dance into the future. And then also her colleague, Jessica Bertram-Williams, is another assistant professor position. Those 2 full-time regular positions, that's really significant. Pam Erickson, our halftime lecturer, who has been there since the beginning and is amazing, is there, along with our other wonderful adjuncts. I mean, Carly-Ann Forth and Brunner, such a force in our city. Carla Parbin, Sarah Glesk. And that's the team that is running everything, and they're doing a great job. And then additionally, we have a position in our dance coordinator, and that's Sydney Zinneker currently. She's an alumni and is the one who helps make things like ZAG Dance happen, our free after-school dance program, or Dance for Parkinson's. So many of the additional programming that we have, she really makes fly. And all of those things have, or many of those things have come into place in the last handful of years.
Yeah, and it was, at least a decade, if not a decade and a half, before the program itself had kind of was generating enough momentum. I mean, you really had to work those early years to make sure that the program even got off the ground. And, when you left, it was just going from strength to strength. You had, you brought in the PNB. There were so many exciting things. Did that make it harder to leave, or was it easier to leave because there was, at that point, so much momentum and everything seemed to be firing on all cylinders?
Yeah. If I can be frank, I can't believe Gonzaga Dance got to the point that it did. I never dreamed or could imagine. Maybe I would have dreamed it, but I couldn't imagine that we would have a major and all these things. And honestly, I got to a point where I couldn't dream any bigger at Gonzaga Dance, which sounds really bizarre because I'm a dreamer. But I was like, man, we've done it. This conference, bringing in PNB, we've got huge numbers of majors and minors. This is awesome. I think it's time for me to go. And really what happened was Cynthia Gutierrez was hired, and she came in last fall with all cylinders firing. And I was like, good Lord, this woman is ready to take this place and run. And I could see the things that she could bring as a leader that I couldn't. And I thought, you know what? I love this program enough that I know that this is the time for me to step away, and this is the time for new leadership. And it's proven to be right.
And I've never known you to want for energy, but had you found to some extent that some of the drive was just fading a little bit because you had taken it from this point when you're working incredibly hard to get a non-existent program into something. And then once it starts gaining momentum, that becomes a real task to sustain that. So had your energy started to wane a little bit, just in terms of maintaining that momentum?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think of a couple things. Yes, I think that, I like a challenge, and I like doing what seems like the impossible, and then I would do it. And then I'd be like, okay, what's next? So once I, built a season that then we were producing consistently, it became a little bit like that. Yeah, we can do this, and it's time for someone else to find the fire for that. I'd also say, I think it's interesting within business. So often there's a CEO who comes in and creates the business, or in a startup, and that's the energy. But then oftentimes that's not the best leader to take it into the future. And knowing that, I kind of was like, wow, I am not the best leader to take it into the future. Cynthia is the right one to really take it to the next step. So feels good.
So the parallels to business are interesting. And we were catching up just before we started recording, and you had mentioned that you had a career in public relations.
Yeah.
Prior to this?
Yes, in the arts. I worked for Pacific Northwest Ballet through the 90s. And one of my jobs there was in public relations.
I had no idea that the connection existed there.
Yes. Oh, goodness. Yes. So when I worked there, two things happened. I worked in public relations, which guided me a lot in my career. But then also I was the founding coordinator of their Dance Chance program, which is inner city youth kiddos auditioning and then being trained as a pipeline. And so that was really the inspiration for our ZAG dance program at Gonzaga, our free after school dance program.
I see.
So working at PNB was very influential. And also because I could watch Francia Russell, who was, and Kent Stoll, her husband, they were the two artistic directors, and watching how she ran this company and this school. And it was very influential for me. So to then be able to have the privilege of getting to develop something at Gonzaga, I had a lot of kind of backgrounds for that. But the reason I brought up public relations before is because oftentimes I have quick little answers to things, because that's what you do in public relations. You never know how long the interview is going to last. So you got to get in all the facts. So I was curious with a podcast whether or not I'd be able to really talk more in depth, but so far I'm doing okay, huh?
I think so. I appreciate you expounding on some of the answers rather than giving me a soundbite.
Good.
The sound bites aren't quite as satisfying. Although, when you're trying to push deadline on a word count, that's when brevity and concision are very much appreciated.
There you go. Well, and funnily enough, now that I've retired, I hadn't listened to a whole lot of podcasts before I retired, but now that I have, when I'm out in my pottery studio, I've got podcasts going all the time. I listen to this one. So it's like I get the energy of it a bit.
But so even though you have stepped down from your official duties at Gonzaga Dance, you are still very much involved in the production of Thumbelina. that's going to be coming up in January. And am I mistaken in thinking that it is a one night only performance?
You are mistaken.
Okay.
Thankfully, we have 5 performances. There's 4
Okay.
public performances. Yeah, no, I've stepped away. I think a lot of people were like, you lived and breathed Gonzaga dance. How could you ever step away? I really have, in so many ways. The ways that I am still engaged there is on Wednesdays, I go and teach dance for Parkinson's, which is so near and dear to my heart that I taught that for years, created the program. Now I have time in my life to teach dance for Parkinson's. I meet with Cynthia just in case there's advising questions or things that she has, like how the heck, what form for this or that? And then I'm doing Thumbelina, which is a much bigger project that goes up in January. Love to talk about it, but really when that's over, I'm peacing out. So
you say that, but I feel like there will be some way to remain involved.
We'll see.
Yeah, because I had seen the website, and maybe it was just it took me to a single page where it only mentioned January 26th.
Uh-oh.
But it could be that I was only looking at that date, and there were other dates available.
I'll check it. It actually opens the 23rd, so it's a Friday the 23rd, Saturday the 24th at 2 and 7:30, and then Sunday at 2. So yeah.
And we might just back up all the way to Thumbelina as a story.
Okay.
Because there are folks who might be familiar with the name, but not necessarily familiar with the story. Yeah. Now, this is a Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale.
Yes.
And Hans Christian Andersen gave us The Little Mermaid.
Yes.
He also gave us The Snow Queen, which became, so people are sensing a Disney theme here, maybe.
Yeah.
And then this production was based on another production that maybe Cynthia had seen that was of the Velveteen Rabbit. So talk me through the story of Thumbelina and her adventures, and then we can maybe move into the genesis of this production.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I'm going to start with the genesis, sorry.
Okay. I give you that flexibility.
Thank you. It's more logical. So yes, last year, the Velveteen Rabbit came to the Myrtle Wilson Performing Arts Center, performed by ODC out of San Francisco. Cynthia and I were in the audience, and I was sitting there just going, I was in love. I was in love with the story and the fact that there are children on the stage and the fact that it was a story ballet. And it took me back to my first 15 years at Gonzaga when I hadn't grown the dance program as big. I actually directed and choreographed a main stage production for theater every year. So I always did the musicals, directed and choreographed it, and I always did the children's theater. And
can I pause you? So you mentioned story ballet.
Yeah.
But aren't most ballets, as maybe we conceive of them, stories? So there's ballet dance that might be choreographed independently and standalone, but a story ballet, when we think of any of the major works they are story ballets, correct?
Yes, long form story ballets, but obviously within the genre of dance and even ballet, there's all kinds of performances that are short works that are not necessarily based on a story, that are more abstract. So this is kind of saying, yes, we're telling a story with movement.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so what happened was Cynthia and I were sitting there and I was falling in love with it, and she said, we do so much at Gonzaga Dance, but it's all concert-based dance. We really don't produce any stories. There's no narrative through line. So wouldn't it be great if we did that at Gonzaga? And you should do it, Suzanne, with your whole background. And as we were sitting there during intermission, and we were like, yeah, we could bring in kids from the community, and we could, our students could then learn not only the art form of telling stories through dance, a specific story ballet, but they could also work with the kiddos in the community. And it could really, and it could be something, we all love Nutcracker, but what if we had our own version, our own Nutcracker that was happening at a different time of the year? So the two of us just were like, pa, 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 pa. And then on the drive home, I may or may not have safely Googled children's stories that are in the public domain. And Thumbelina was one of the ones that came up. And that's a happy, happy memory from my childhood was Thumbelina. I know the song, and I don't know, it was just a happy thought. And I probably within 24 hours had just created this entire thing. And I went into her office the next day and I was like, so that thing you said we could do next year, I want to do this. I am fired up. I'm ready. And I think part of the reason I was so excited, I know, and then I'll tell you the story, but part of the reason I was so excited too was it was a coming together of all of my kind of career and skills. It's not, it is choreographing a story ballet, but it's also, I'm adapting the script. So writing the script, I'm involved in all visual aspects of it. And so it just kind of was the perfect thing to put a lot of energy while she took over as chair that could also serve Gonzaga dance. However, so here's
when you say the script, do you mean the story, or did you write a dedicated script?
Yeah, so we do have a dedicated script. So let me tell you the story first, and then we can circle back. I am just taking charge. So the story of Thumbelina, Hans Christian, it's a lovely story, but there are ways in which it didn't work today for me. It's about this little creature who is born out of a flower, and this woman finds her and takes care of her for a while, and then a frog comes and takes her away, and essentially she goes on all these different adventures where people are trying to make her marry or do things that are not her. But it's a lot about marriage. So
the frog wants, or the frog or toad, he wants to marry her.
Yeah, the toad's mom wants her to marry the son. Yeah, you did some research.
Oh yeah. Well, I had a loose recollection of the story, and then obviously kind of wanted to make sure that my loose recollection or hazy recollection was right.
Tell me more.
But then the mole.
Mr. Mole.
So she's nursing a swallow, and then somehow gets in conversation with the mole, and so he's got marriage designs as well.
And Mrs. Fieldmouse wants her to marry Mr. Mole because it's also going to help Mrs. Fieldmouse.
Right.
So it's just like this constant. She meets up with beetles who mock her and say that she should look like them and makes fun of them. She goes on this adventure with butterflies and swallows and all these different things. And then in Hans Christian Andersen's ending, she finds the prince that she's going to marry. And, lovely, whatever. I thought it was great when I was a little kid. But to me, I'm just like, what? That is so. What is the story here? That it's just about marrying?
And it's kind of girl power up to a point.
Right?
And then in the end, it's like, oh, no, we're going to be really retrograde.
Yeah, and make it be a prince. And in all the old coloring books, he looks just like her, which is just weird. So, so I was like, okay, I love you, Hans Christian Andersen. I love what you provided us, but this is now in the public domain. So I actually have some agency to then kind of guide this. So I did take the original story and kept as much of it as I could. But, for example, every time something bad happened to her, she cried. And I was just like, no, there are a lot of other emotions she can have. It can piss her off. She can put her foot down. She can be sad. She doesn't have to cry every single time. So I've tried to kind of guide things like that so that ultimately our story is about agency, which it was there already, and kindness. Because even when the old woman meets her, she kind of teaches her kindness. And then even when the beetles are being mean to her, she has agency to say, well, I disagree with them, but she can be kind. Even when Mr. Mole comes along and Mrs. Fieldmouse is trying to get them to get married, she's kindly listening to his stories. But, and she kindly nurses the swallow back to life. So it is about kindness and agency and not just about marriage. And so in the end, when she gets to the beautiful flower land, all of a sudden she meets all these delightful little flower people. And so these flower people, which is in the story, but in our story, they're each a different color. So there's the orange one who's in everyday pedestrian clothing, but then has orange flower petals on them, or the yellow one or the green one, because we can all be, from different colors within this wonderful thing. And she talks about, or the narration says that, so these people weren't trying to force her to get married or to be like this or to be like that. They just wanted to be together and live their life happily under the sun. So that's where we end, not with a wedding. And
there was always a bittersweet note, though, because the swallow transports her, after she nurses the swallow back to health, the swallow transports her to this magical land, and then feels very dejected when she forsakes the swallow for the prince. And there's certain poignancy to that. So how does the swallow behave in this version?
Yeah, the swallow is happy that Thumbelina has found a community that enjoys the sunshine and flowers as she does, and is grateful for the kindness that she expressed to bring him back to life. So it's not this weird competition thing. I love that you researched it. This is so cool. There's not a lot of people I can talk Thumbelina to.
But the thing is, when you had this conception, you thought you you Googled very safely, public domain stories.
Yeah.
You arrived at Thumbelina, then you go and you pitch it to Cynthia.
Yeah.
How much had you conceived at this point? Did you already have some of the choreo in mind and how that might look? Was your mind already working along those lines? Or did you just kind of have a tableau and you think, I think this is my vision, let's flesh that out?
Yeah. Great question. I think, no, I did not have choreo. That came much later. That came with composition. No, really what I had for her was some solutions. Thumbelina is supposed to be very tiny. How do you make her tiny when you don't have budgets for big old sets? And so one of the first things that I realized is that we had a kind of slot that we could potentially use in the Magnuson, our smaller theater. And so I realized that if we could do it in there, we could project on the back wall. I could paint the projections so that they're enormous so that she looks tiny. And so that way we can go through all these different lands with projection versus big expensive set pieces. So that was a solution that I had. I also, everything that I did when I was at Gonzaga Dance was always kind of the bigger picture, right? How does this serve the students' education, but then also how does it serve our connection to the community through working with the kids and the studios and all of that. So those pieces I had kind of really thought through as a benefit to the program that way. And then I also knew that at that point, that was like last February. It was not that long ago. And I knew that we hadn't built into our budget like scenic or costumes or anything for creating a world premiere story ballet. So I had some of the thoughts about how, well, I've retired. I will have retired by then. So I could actually, and I actually design, and so I could actually be the designer for the costumes, and I could actually sew some of the petals. And I had done some silk painting in my career, and I love painting silks. And I was like, well, I could paint the silks and then sew them into flower petals, right?
You said a few minutes ago how this was kind of the culmination and the coalescing of all your skills, and you kind of almost saw it in academic terms, but this is all the artistic and creative skills, like every hobby you've ever had is
oh my gosh,
feeding into this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then sometimes I feel a little selfish because it's like all these things that I just love doing. But in the end, I'm creating something that Cynthia could, if she decided, present every other year, have other people come in. We've got the costumes, we've got the script, we've got the score. So another part that I had thought about ahead of time was that how to make it so that it could, because that was the vision. It wasn't going to be a single show. It was going to be something that we could bring into the rep that then they could produce every other year or however frequently they want to. So I wanted to make it as packageable as possible. So what I've done is it's a recorded narration. And then I talked with our composition professor at Gonzaga, Professor Croft, and he pitched it to all of his composition students, and one student's hand just shot up and he said, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to compose a story ballet. And his name's Nick Marshall. He is phenomenal. When I heard his music, I was like, all right, we got a show. It is gorgeous. So what we've done is since about May, he's been composing, and then I recorded my voice. I'm the narrator too. So I recorded my voice, and then we've been working at putting the music together with the narration, along with working with this amazing guy, Zach Padella from Gonzaga, who's then taking my paintings and putting it into projections so that they could take that package, were they to so choose, in 2 years and represent it.
So a couple things.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say that one of the reasons I have admired you so strongly is because you are thinking of this interconnectedness and all the myriad ways that the community can kind of tie in to this. So your first thought wasn't necessarily let's do a production, but let's do a production that can involve the community. And I love the idea of having Spokane's version of a Nutcracker, so something that we're not necessarily dependent on other entities for. This is something that's very homegrown, yes, and feels very community oriented.
Yeah, so absolutely. Thank you.
I just really admire the fact that your mind goes there. The one question I do have is about the composition, and so is this for full orchestra? Is it for string quartet? What sort of instrumentation?
Kids these days, what they can do, right? So what he's done is he's recorded it all electronically with all the strings and all the amazingness. And I've worked with a lot of composers over the years, and sometimes it just sounds so MIDI, right? Just like that. But this is just like from day one. Every now and then we find an instrument where we're like, yeah, that's not working. But it really is so rich. Someone referred to him as Disney with dignity, which I think is kind of fun. Or Disney with depth. That's what it was, Disney with depth. But I probably shouldn't say that. But he... so he's been composing that. But what's great is with his programs now, he can make it so that it's also sheet music for live orchestra to play. So as a result, at the end of last spring semester, I got to go to this amazing concert from the music department where one of our songs from Thumbelina was played by a quartet, which was chill-inducing, tear-inducing experience. So yes, could this be produced someday with a full orchestra? It could.
And the performances in January, they are going to be recorded.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's recorded because it's in Magnuson, right? We just can't fit a full orchestra in there.
Well, I was even thinking make like a string quartet or a string quintet or something like that.
And maybe, he's really talented. I could see the music department taking that and running with it. We also wanted it to be recorded so that if they wanted to take it on the road and tour it, so we're making it as, manageable as possible. But the future, who knows?
Yeah. And of course, I'm thinking in very classical instrumentation fashion. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing that precludes you from having like a synth and a drum machine and a theremin and, using all sorts of wild instrumentation as well. So.
And who knows? I mean, if Gonzaga does this every other year, that could, with the music department, that could go. Or if it goes, to other places as well. Lots of opportunity.
And so with Thumbelina, what organizations are you going to be involving from the community? Have you already done that outreach and are they already kind of working towards it?
Yeah, it's been really fun. We did reach out to every studio that we have on our studio list. So we have sent out emails letting them know about it. We're actually visiting the studios now and bringing flyers and information because we have auditions for the kiddos on December 14th. Okay. So even though I've been working with the college students all semester, we're having auditions after Nutcracker because we know everyone's very Nutcracker focused, as they should be. But on December 15th, then they can turn their attention to Thumbelina. And then in January, I'll rehearse with them Saturdays and Sundays. College kids come back, we put it together, and it goes out the 23rd.
No kidding. And how far along is the choreo? Are you in the fine-tuning stages?
Yeah. So part of it is we have this little thing called Thanksgiving and Christmas in the middle of the whole thing. So when I was looking at the productions calendar, I really had to map it out. Also, we have designer runs. And so we like to have a run of a performance and bring in the lighting designer and scenic, different designers in to see it. And I knew the only chance I could have a designer run was actually next Wednesday or in mid-November. And so I've really had to work in terms of having a performance by mid-November. It's not polished, it's not done, but I'd say it's 75% choreographed and set. The work that I need to do now is a lot of working with Thumbelina, Mrs. Field Mouse, and Mr. Mole with a lot of the kind of acting dancing with telling the story. I've really set all the full company work. We have a company of 8 that are the butterflies and the swallows and all that, and that I've set.
So it's a company of 8 Gonzaga students. Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you evoke for me, and I know that things are still being dialed in, sure, and we don't want to give too many spoilers away, but can you evoke for me some of the movements that you have built into the choreo? Like what are we going to see? Is there are there movements associated with Thumbelina, for example, that are meant to capture her diminutiveness, for example? Yeah,
so fun. So I'd say, compositionally, Nick has really done some great things with giving a sound. There's this wonderful flute that's Thumbelina, and so it kind of flows throughout and kind of her response to things. So that's really ignited different quick, bright ways for her to move kind of as she's discovering and figuring out who she is. There are the toads, as we talked about, and the swamp and the sounds of that, and what we've done with their bodies is maybe it's still within the ballet genre, but we're also flexing our feet and, creating interesting shapes. There is kind of different senses with each. I think that's been also the amazing blessing with being the costume designer and the choreographer, because like the butterflies, what I did was I hand painted the silk and then I stitched the wings, and they have extended sticks on them so that they can do all this big movement. But as a choreographer, I literally designed the costumes with those things in mind, or the swallows in a different way. So Yeah, it's been a total use of all of my kind of creative faculties with each one of these things. The frogs have these big gloves with these big things, and so using their hands in different ways. Yeah, it's been a hoot and a half.
And when was the last time you did something on this scale? I mean,
yeah.
you've done smaller scale choreo.
Yeah.
But this seems like a totally different animal and a pretty big beast.
Yeah, it takes me back. Probably the last big show I did for Gonzaga, at least, was Jesus Christ Superstar, when I directed and choreographed that. And that was in
2014?
Good Lord, you're amazing. Yes, I think it was. Something like that, 2014. That's so funny. Yeah, so that was big. And it was also at a time where Gonzaga dance was just taking off. So that was kind of my last big show that way. I choreographed for Inland Northwest Opera when they did Eurydice and Orpheus and Eurydice.
Yeah.
So I've done projects that way, but this kind of directing, choreographing of this size and scale, yeah, it's probably been since 2014. Yeah.
And one of the questions I think that it invariably must be asked is, so much of your MO has been to expand the dance program beyond self-identified dance aficionados. Is this going to speak to a wider public, or is that your hope that it will catch on like the Nutcracker, where people make it a fairly ritual event to go down and see it?
Absolutely. It's such a charming story. And I think that's, yes, I love art for art's sake, and I love contemporary dance, but I also really love to build communities and bring people in to experience it. And I feel like this will be just such an ideal way to bring in families and kiddos. I was writing about it recently, and it is for the young at heart, and kind of everyone, because it's a charming story with beautiful dance. Our dancers are doing an amazing job, mainly of the ballet genre, but we have other elements within that. But ultimately telling a story, of hope and determination, agency and kindness, which these days we definitely need.
Yeah. And do you see then the Gonzaga program being sort of a pillar of the local dance scene? Because right now the dance scene seems to be thriving. I had folks in here not too long ago waxing rapturous about Ghostlight. And that seemed to be, a real event on a lot of people's calendars. They were saying, we have to go see this. And it just feels like dance more than ever. It was something that maybe appealed to dance aficionados, and dance aficionados were going out and supporting them. But again, you have that, that point at which it crosses the threshold into more mainstream attendance. And it really seems to be doing that. I feel like more and more people are hip to the dance scene and are making it a point, even if they don't say, hey, I'm a dance nut. They're still going out and catching some of these productions. Do you get that sense as well? Or do you feel like, Spokane still has to be kind of persuaded to see more dance and appreciate dance?
Always needs to be persuaded. But I think great things are happening. And I think, it's really the leadership. When you look at what Carly-Ann Forthenbrenner and Monica Mota, who started Kindling Productions, right? They're doing the Ghostlight performances now in its third, fourth year. A huge production that people are crazy about, but then they also do Rising Tide, and they also do 12 Minutes Max. So they're presenting 3 times a year, in addition to Quiero Flamenco and all that other amazing. They're creating avenues by which people can do the work and by which audiences want to see the work. So I really celebrate their incredible efforts. Yeah, again, Monica with the Quiero Flamenco has been around for a long time and brings out the audiences because it's so stunning and so vibrant and energetic. And then we have Vital Movement, right? Started by Vinca Screen and continuing its tradition with its amazing company. So, those are hardworking, dedicated artists making that happen. Crystal Bain out of Coeur d'Alene, let alone all the studios that we have all over town that are, competing or have their end of year concerts. So I think that, yes, there is great things happening in dance. My energy, obviously, for those 25 years was focused on what can Gonzaga Dance do? And what could it do within its place of privilege as part of a bigger institution with things like the Myrtle Woolson or with our after-school dance program or Dance for Parkinson's. So, I think in so many ways, amazing things are happening. And yet it's also really vibrant and rich and able to do even more.
Yeah.
More can happen.
But as you pointed out earlier, the Myrtle Woodson, just that the existence of that performing arts center has really lent a certain momentum to the dance scene, because I saw Quiero Flamenco at the Myrtle Woodson when they did the televised performance or the recorded performance with KSPS. And again, I think those are the experiences that I'm drawing on when I think of a lot of people in the audience didn't seem to me like they were the usual dance crowd. It really seemed to be or casting a wider net or drawing from a wider pool. And so those are the things that I find kind of encouraging, is because I think, here are people who, the casual dance fans, because you need them. You can't rely on the core dance audience to come out and support every single production.
Yeah, and I think that's, so a couple of things about that. Myrtle Woodson, unbelievable space. Yay, Myrtle, thank you so much. But also, I will say, when that space was coming into being, there wasn't really language at Gonzaga about the three art forms of theater and dance and music, right? We had a really long-standing history with music, a long, history with theater, and then dance was kind of this other up-and-coming thing. And I really love that Gonzaga embraced this idea that all three art forms belong in that space, because there's historically, there are spaces where they maybe will only focus on one or another, right? Whereas Gonzaga said, yes, all three. And then on top of that, I had the privilege of being on the search committee when Stephen Cummins was hired for the Myrtle Woodson. And I remember his background coming in, he had presented a ton of outstanding, excellent dance. And I was like, yes, if we could get him, in addition to amazing music and amazing theater, but people could show up to be a director of that building and be like, I'm a theater person, right? Or I'm a music person. We'll see if we add the other ones in here. But he's really had a vision for having all three really represented. And I think what he's doing, which I really think is great, is he's choosing, he's an excellent curator. He's bringing in really excellent dance companies, from really big names to also maybe ones that people don't know. But I feel like those casual dance people will come and be like, what they present there at Myrtle Woodson's worth going to. It's good parking. That's worth going to.
Yeah.
Which I'm happy for.
And all those big names lend the local scene a certain amount of creds when you're attracting that level of talent.
Yeah, pretty cool.
And I suppose, and again, maybe it's my own misconception, but the way I'm kind of coming at this and some of the impetus behind my questioning was I feel like dance is often seen as a slightly more niche art form than music and theater. And so when you say there are these three pillars and, music, theater, and dance is being put on an equal level with them, then that elevates it in the public minds as well. So,
absolutely. And that was part of my drive, right, at Gonzaga and with Gonzaga Dance, was that we were, the number of students, the number of productions, the quality of what we were doing, that was really a thrill to keep elevating that so that it could stand on equal footing.
So I don't know how you have any extra time in your retirement because of all the work that you're doing on Thumbelina. I honestly had no idea the scope of your involvement. It's pretty remarkable.
It's fun.
But in your retirement, you are also kind of doubling down on the arts advocacy. And so you're now co-chair of the Spokane Arts Commission. And then you've also taken up this hobby that you share with Dean Davis, which is ceramics.
Yeah, baby.
For folks who aren't familiar with the Arts Commission and its role with Spokane Arts, and maybe this is a bit, kind of inside baseball, but I think it would be helpful to talk about, you being serving on the Arts Commission and what kind of is on the agenda of late.
Sure. Yeah, it's funny. Yes, it sounds like I've got a lot going on, but compared to how much I had going on at Gonzaga Dance, this is a walk in the park. So yes, I'm getting to do all these other things. Also, because Gonzaga Dance was so all-consuming in developing and creating that program, that's where my energy was. And I knew about the arts, in Spokane and was aware of it, but I was always so pulled away. So it's so delicious to now celebrate Gonzaga Dance, but to have my sights set, in a much bigger way, on the arts in our region, arts in our city. So becoming a commissioner was really a real honor. So,
not to interrupt, even though I realize I'm doing that,
that's
but
okay.
It also gets you out of the pigeonhole that people had kind of put you in, because they knew you were dance.
Yeah.
And so they associated you with that singularly.
True.
And so becoming an arts commissioner allows you to kind of,
Absolutely.
become known and advocate for more than dance.
Yes. And because I really do see myself as equal parts theater, dance, and visual artist, which, most people don't see me that way. But when you look at the breadth of my career, there are I mean, maybe dance is a little bit heavier, but they're pretty equal. So yes, and advocating for the arts is exactly what I did at Gonzaga Dance, right? Was advocating constantly to get in front of people. And so to get to do that with the commission is exciting. It's an exciting time too, because, for anyone who, just a brief history, there was a time where we had a department for the arts in Spokane. We had a mayor who said, nope, I'm going to cut that, and eliminated the department. Not cool. And so we had Spokane Art that formed this nonprofit who said, we need this kind of support. We need this to happen. And so they've been working really hard all these years, supporting and making all of that happen. We're too big of a city to not have in my opinion, this is just my humble opinion, we're too big of a city to not have a department for arts and culture.
I say that's objective truth.
Yeah,
It goes beyond opinion.
Come on. And so what I'm so excited about is it's an and that the current mayor sees that, yes, we need a department of Arts and Culture and is working to make that happen, at the same time celebrating all the amazing work that the Spokane Arts does. And so has extended a 2-year contract so that they can continue doing their amazing work, and then also building, an art department. To what size, to what degree, to what, I don't know. But what's huge is that having a liaison in the city actually will make the Spokane Arts Commission more effective, because there hasn't been really a city tie to get the Spokane Arts Commission to work and to do things. And so this way, Spokane Arts is existing, and then with this liaison, hopefully the Spokane Art Commission can really make things happen. So I'm excited to be a part of that.
Yeah, and I'm asking this as a former chair of the Arts Commission myself, and so unfortunately that was at a time when there wasn't a heck of a lot happening because it was through COVID. So we had our
thank you for your service.
We were putting out very, very different fires, and so now I wouldn't necessarily call this normalcy, or I hope it's not. But now that we've exited the COVID phase, and you're able to focus on on much different things. What do you see as the role of the Spokane Arts Commission now? Yeah.
I think that remains to be seen a little bit with the city's involvement. Spokane Arts does so much with what they do, almost too much, right? They do so much and they work so hard. And so I think that for me, it seems like if there's a way that the Arts Commission can actually support the arts in a bigger way by helping with some of that, would be phenomenal. I don't know what that looks like. I think everyone's working together. Skylar Oberst is the executive director, amazing at being a part of these conversations and communicating and saying, okay, how do we all work together to better the arts? So it remains to be seen, but I am very hopeful.
Good.
Yeah.
And I guess that brings us, or spits us out at ceramics, because this is something that you've taken up relatively recently, and you have thrown yourself into it and become based. Unintentional pun.
It was great.
And based on the images that I have seen, you've become pretty accomplished at that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I am loving it. Yeah, about 3 years ago, I think, is when I started getting my hands in the mud, became obsessed with it immediately, and really, became obsessed. And so have just been really learning all that I can, also knowing that I could spend the rest of my life learning this art form and never scratch the surface. So I think that wonder, that curiosity, that child mind of like figuring it out has been really great to redirect that into clay. Doing that for Gonzaga Dance was great. And now directing into this and some other projects. But yeah, I've done First Fridays, October, November. I'm doing one in December. Then I'll probably take a big break. But it's been really fun out of my studio in Brown's Edition. People can come and see the pottery that I'm doing, see my paintings on the wall, connect and be a community and get a gift for a friend.
And so when Dean Davis was in here, and Dean Davis was your instructor in a class?
No, he was an instructor. Actually, the funny thing was I've never taken a class from him, but I would go and throw pots in Clay Connection while he was teaching.
Yeah,
so it was kind of like I was eavesdropping. He was awesome.
Okay. So you were benefiting by proximity.
I was, yeah.
But he likened it, and I'm paraphrasing here,
Yeah.
but he likened his initial experience with clay to almost the first time he picked up a camera and feeling, some that connection there, and feeling as though it were a bit of a homecoming. Is that what you felt too? Or were you thinking, like, did you feel the same passion for clay from the very beginning as you have felt for dance?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. Yeah, it has just pulled my heart and my creativity. I think there's also something about time that is really significant, right? I've spent my career in an ephemeral art form, right? Dance is there and then it's gone. And that's why I got into visual arts early on, was because you could create a painting and it could hang on a wall and it wasn't going anywhere. Whereas dance, I would create these things and gone. So I think clay has been that for me, that sense of time when it comes to timing of the glazes, or when you kiln, or how long you bisque fire it, and all of that timing, but then also the permanence of it has been really powerful. And then just the fact that they're vessels and can hold things, the movement of the glazes, I oftentimes liken to dance, because in some ways you don't know what it's going to do. You can kind of anticipate, but it's alive somehow. So yeah, it's been such a fun place to put my creative capital, right? Sometimes I feel like I've got all this creative juices. Where do I want to direct it? And I directed into Gonzaga Dance for a long time, and that was wonderful. Now I'm getting to direct my creative capital into things like Spokane Arts, to clay, to my future retreats, which I didn't even bring up, but or even being on the board of trustees of the MAC, which is very, very new, but just places to invest that somehow.
And I have to ask, with clay, you mentioned that they're vessels and they fulfill a practical purpose.
Yeah.
Are your the vessels that you create, are they meant to be used practically?
Yeah.
Or are they decorative?
They are functional pottery.
Okay.
And I think that's that's where I am right now. Who knows in the future? But I do like the fact that someone can buy something and maybe they find it beautiful or inspiring, but then they can also drink their coffee out of it and have their cereal. There's something cool about the practicality of that. Maybe after being in dance, when we'd have these concerts and they'd go, and the vessel was the learning the students did, or the inspiration the audience felt. But there's something really tangible about that I like. But I'll just say it out loud, because then I'll do it. I also really want to get into sculpting. I think with mine...
Well, that seems like a logical
doesn't
progression.
it?
Yeah.
With my body knowledge, and I love painting figures and drawing figures. And so I was talking with my son the other day. I'm like, I've got to find a ceramics class or a sculpting class. And he was like, why don't you just do it? And I thought that was such a great thing to say. Yeah, you're right. I could buy clay and I could just start making figures. So who knows what'll come next.
Oh, watch this space. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be fun. Could be really fun.
So we've we've looked 25 years into the past and beyond a little bit. We've looked a few months ahead into the future, and we're going to be seeing some clay studio open houses. We're going to be seeing Thumbelina. And now we're going to change tracks almost entirely, and we're going to go into the lightning round.
Okay.
And you are prepared for this, semi-prepared. You have no idea what I'm about to ask, but you're prepared for the...
I know it exists. I've listened to the podcast.
The concept of the lightning round is not new to you.
Yeah, wow, are we at an hour? That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. The first is always an either-or question. Astrology or astronomy?
Oh, golly. Astrology. I don't know why. It just came out.
So maybe we can just delve into your subconscious a little bit. Why astrology over astronomy?
Because you said it first.
A more mythical allure?
No, yeah, I guess so, because I'm a Leo, right? Isn't that astrology? Astronomy are the actual stars?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have no idea why. That stumped me.
Okay.
I guess I'm nervous now.
No, that's great. And I guess that's getting to the heart of the lightning round, where you just, it's like a Rorschach, just give me your first impression.
Yeah, because the science of the stars is fascinating, but I haven't spent a lot of time with that. Whereas I think when I was younger, it was like, what is a Leo? Who am I? You're a Cancer. What does that mean?
Yeah,
I think it's more that, people-based.
Second question.
Uh-oh.
And I realize that this will have double meaning for you.
Okay.
But that's the point.
Okay.
What is your signature dance move? So when you're cutting a rug or you're choreographing, what is your signature dance move?
Yeah, jazz hands. It's just gotta be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm with a big group of people and we're all smiling, getting our photo taken, I always have to be like, all right, everybody do jazz hands, just because it changes up the energy. And yeah, so I don't think you see jazz hands at all in Thumbelina, but that's my signature move, a little wiggle. I was talking about that in Dance for Parkinson's the other day, that as we mature, that horrible word, we wiggle less, right? When you're a kid, you wiggle and you jazz hands and things like that. So with the Dance for Parkinson's community, I'm trying to find places where we can all just kind of wiggle and express that way. And it makes everyone giggle because they're self-conscious, but at the same time, it's so freeing. So
yeah, there's something exuberant about jazz hands. Yeah. Very freeing, very liberating. So you are often accompanied by King Louis.
Yes.
Always accompanied by
you see
King
me,
Louis.
you're going to see him.
What pets did you have growing up?
Oh, yeah. So King Louis, for anyone who doesn't know, is my service dog who I have for medical conditions. So you see me, you see him. He's with me right now.
And what breed is he?
He is a terrier and Chihuahua mix.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Which are both really high-strung animals, right?
But he's pretty relaxed.
He's very mellow.
Yeah,
as long as I'm okay, he's okay. So, yeah, pets growing up, we were not big. We did not have dogs. We had a cat named Tinsel after the Christmas decoration, and we had goldfish. That's it. Yeah. So we were not big like dog or pet people.
And when did you first acquire a service animal? Is King Louis your first?
Yes, King Louis is my first, and I have had him, I think, 7 years now. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look. So, yeah, but he's going to live forever if that's your next question. So there you go.
And then finally, you have mentioned how much time you end up spending, even in retirement, on the Gonzaga campus. And so I'm excluding it as an answer. You cannot answer the Gonzaga campus.
I'm not there that much, literally only Wednesdays.
Okay,
so
that's
you know.
good. Okay.
Yeah.
Your favorite hangout in Spokane?
Gosh, this is not very, my studio. I love that I get to be in my studio now more extensively. I've had the studio for well over a decade, and I've always gone out and done projects in it. But the fact that I'm not going into the Gonzaga and teaching and doing all that to get my podcasts on and to get the clay out or the paints, or in this case, my silk paints and all of that, that is a very, very happy place for me right now.
And this is like a mixed art room. This is where all the creativity
Everything
takes
happens.
place.
And I love working that way. I'll have the silk paint set up, so I'll work on some of the silks, and then as that's drying, I'll move over and throw a couple pots, and then I'll add some paint to the canvas. So I'm able to kind of keep these multiple things working, and that keeps just the creativity flowing. So yeah, I feel really fortunate that I have a space to make the way I do.
Yeah, we should all be so lucky.
Oh, totally. Totally.
Suzanne, I want to thank you so much for coming in today.
This is really fun.
I'm glad it was.
Thank you for caring and being interested and for doing your research on Thumbelina. Good work.
Cool.